At 17, my adopted sister claimed I got her pregnant. 10 years later, she finally told the truth in court. Hi, I'm Sebastian, 26, and when I was 17, my adopted sister accused me of getting her pregnant. My whole life exploded in one sentence. My family disowned me. My girlfriend left. And I vanished. That was 10 years ago. Last week, the truth finally came out, and they showed up crying on my porch. I didn't answer the door. But let me take you back to where it started, to the moment my life split in two. It was a Saturday dinner, the kind my parents loved throwing. Full house. Grandparents, uncles, cousins, laughter bouncing off every surface. Mom was loud and beaming, cracking jokes and bragging about our big, loyal family. Dad manned the grill. My older brother Sam and I dragged out the fold-out chairs like we always did. And my adopted sister sat quiet as usual, peeling the label off her water bottle. And came into our lives when she was 8. My parents always wanted a girl, and she was a perfect fit, sweet, smart, shy. I was just a kid when she arrived, but I helped her with homework, taught her how to ride a bike, even took the blame once when she broke a lamp. She called me Seb instead of Sebastian. And for the longest time, that name felt like home. That night, I noticed something was off. And wasn't eating. She kept staring at her plate, fiddling with her bracelet. I figured maybe she had a stomachache. Maybe school drama. I didn't push. Then, after dinner, while everyone lounged in the living room, and stood up. Her hands shook. I need to say something, she said. The room stilled. Even the TV went quiet. She looked straight at me. Sebastian forced me, she said, barely above a whisper. At first, I didn't understand. I blinked. What? Then she added, I'm pregnant. That's when the floor dropped out from under me. My dad didn't wait for an explanation. His fist landed across my face like he'd been waiting years to do it. My mom screamed. My brother looked at me like I'd grown horns. I hit the floor with blood in my mouth and the weight of 30 people staring at me like I was a monster. I didn't, I gasped. She's lying. No one cared. My father yelled. You brought shame into this house. And collapsed into my mom's arms, sobbing. The cops came an hour later. I was 17, bleeding, disoriented, and already erased. They didn't arrest me. There was no evidence, no confession, no proof. But when they let me go the next morning, my life was over anyway. My stuff was dumped on the lawn. My mother turned her face away. My father stood silent, blocking the doorway. You're not welcome here, he said. I woke up to the sound of a delivery truck slamming its gate. My jaw ached from where my dad hit me. My stomach growled like an empty sink. The sun was coming up, and I had no plan. No home. No one to call. I checked my phone, 2% battery. No new messages. Just silence. So I did what made sense to a kid who had nothing left. I drove until my tank ran dry, coasted into a small town called Ridgemont, never heard of it. Didn't care. It had a diner with a flickering neon sign and a "Help Wanted" paper taped to the window. I walked in like a ghost and asked if they were still hiring. The man behind the counter looked me over. Big guy. Gray beard. Calloused hands. The kind of man who didn't flinch easy. You ever wash dishes? He asked. No, sir, I said. You hungry? No, sir, I lied. He stared a second longer, then tossed the dish rag at me. You start now. You eat after. That was Andy. And that diner became my first safe place. I scrubbed dishes until my knuckles cracked. The heat from the steam made me dizzy. I almost passed out twice. But I didn't stop. When the shift ended, Andy handed me half a burger someone hadn't finished and a plate of fries. Room upstairs, he grunted. Not fancy. Lock works. Work off the rent. It was a shoebox with a stained mattress and a buzzing bulb. I slept for 14 hours. And for the first time in days, I didn't dream of Anne's voice breaking the air like glass. In the weeks that followed, I became part of that diner. I learned how to fix the broken ice machine. Patch a leaking sink. Change a fryer filter without burning my hand. Andy taught me without teaching, just grunted instructions and nodded when I got things right. He never asked questions. Not about my name. Not about the bruises. Just handed me a wrench and said, turn clockwise. I needed that. Someone who didn't see me as broken. But peace doesn't stay quiet forever. One day, a trucker walked in, looked at me, and said, "Hey, ain't you the kid from that news story? The one with the sister?" I froze. Andy looked at him, then looked at me. "Go clean the back room," he said. When I returned, the guy was gone. "You got a story?" Andy asked. "Yeah," I said. "But no one ever cared to hear it." He nodded slowly. "Well, I ain't no judge. You work hard. That's all I need." That moment? That sentence? It saved me more than therapy ever could. Because someone had finally looked at me and said, "You're not what they said you were." It happened just after my 26th birthday. I was under a crawlspace fixing a busted HVAC unit when my phone buzzed so hard it slipped off the beam and hit me in the cheek. Unknown number. Local area code. I almost ignored it. Almost. But I answered. "Sebastian?" a woman's voice asked. I froze. I hadn't heard that voice in almost a decade. "Emma?" she sighed. "Yeah. I know I'm the last person you expected to hear from. But I needed to tell you something before you hear it from someone else." I crawled out from under the house, heart thudding in my throat. "Anne's been arrested," she said. I went completely still. "For what?" "For accusing another guy. Same way she did you. But this time, he had a lawyer." He pushed back hard. Investigators dug in. They found the holes. Emma took a shaky breath. "Seb, during the interviews, and confessed. She told them what really happened. That she lied about you. That it wasn't you. That it was never you." I didn't speak. Couldn't. "She admitted the pregnancy came from a one-night stand with some guy named Vernon. He bailed. She panicked. Blamed you because she thought everyone would believe her." I sat down in the gravel driveway, dirt smeared on my arms, my head spinning. "They cleared your name. Officially. The police cleared your name, Seb." I closed my eyes. I'd imagined this moment for years. Pictured it 100 different ways. With tears, with shouting, with forgiveness maybe. But sitting there, covered in dirt, with the air around me silent? All I felt was tired. "What about my family?" I asked. Emma hesitated. "They know. It's all out now. And they—" She didn't finish. "They want to talk to you," she finally whispered. I laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. 10 years. 10 years of silence. 10 years of building myself from scraps, of learning how to live without them, of scrubbing dishes, fixing vents, and watching birthdays pass like traffic signs on a road I never wanted. And now they wanted to talk? I hung up without saying goodbye. That night they came. First an email from my brother. "We were wrong. Please call." Then a voicemail from my mom, crying. Then one from my dad, his voice shaking for the first time since I was a kid. They stood at my front door the next morning, eyes puffy, hands wringing. I didn't open it. I stood behind the curtain and watched them cry. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next few weeks were surreal. News of Anne's confession spread. Quietly at first, then like wildfire through the town I used to call home. I kept my head down. Still showed up for HVAC jobs, still fixed things, still ate lunch out of the cooler in my truck. But people looked at me differently now. Not like I was dangerous, just like they didn't know where to put me anymore. A woman at the grocery store actually whispered, "I'm so sorry for what they did to you," before ducking down the cereal aisle like I might bite her. My mom tried calling again. So did my brother. My dad even left a voicemail saying, "You've always been my son. I just forgot how to be your father." Too late. I spent the nights writing letters. Not to send, just to say what no one let me say back then. I wrote to Anne. "You didn't just lie. You stole a decade from me. A decade I can't get back. I hope every night in that prison feels like the nights I spent alone in my car, freezing and furious." I wrote to my dad. "I looked up to you. Until you looked at me like I was a monster." I wrote to my mom. "You asked me to be strong. Then you disappeared the second I needed you to be strong for me." And I wrote one to Emma. "You were the only one who believed me. Even when you had to walk away. That mattered more than you'll ever know." I kept them in a box in my desk labeled unsent. Meanwhile, life moved on. My business was doing well, 2 full-time hires, steady contracts. Andy, the guy who gave me a roof all those years ago, had become more like a dad than my real one ever was. One morning, I was fixing an AC unit at the local bakery when he pulled up and handed me a coffee. Got a weird call today, he said. Your name's cleared, huh? I nodded. He grunted. Took him long enough. Then he patted my back and added, Still proud of you, kid. That hit harder than any apology ever could. And then came the letter. Not a phone call. Not an email. A paper envelope with no return address. Inside, a visitation request. From Anne. She was asking to see me. In prison. Just the thought of her name on paper made my throat tighten. I almost tore it up. Almost. But something in me needed to see her face when I said the one thing she never let me say. You ruined me. And now I was going to make sure she remembered. The prison was 2 hours away. Just far enough to make it feel like I could turn around at any moment. I didn't. I wore my work clothes. No suit. No button-down. Just the same faded polo with my company logo and the name I earned, Winter Air Systems, stitched over my heart. They scanned my ID, buzzed open 3 doors, and led me to a cold, gray visitation room that smelled like bleach and stale coffee. A guard nodded toward the table in the middle. She walked in a few minutes later. Anne. And I swear, for a second, I didn't recognize her. Thinner. Pale. Her shoulders curved inward like gravity finally won. The girl who once stood in front of our entire family and painted me as a monster now looked like she hadn't slept in years. She sat down slowly, didn't meet my eyes. Thank you for coming, she whispered. I didn't say anything. She fiddled with her hands like they still remembered the lie they held. You look different, she finally said. Older. You look guilty, I said. Her head dropped. Tears welled instantly. I deserve that. No, I said. You deserve worse. Silence stretched between us like a canyon. I wanted to tell you in person, she said, voice shaking. I was scared. Vernon, the guy who got me pregnant, he vanished. Wouldn't answer. Said if I told anyone, he'd disappear. And you decided to throw me in the fire instead. I didn't think it would go that far, she said, breath catching. I thought you'd deny it, and people would just move on. Move on? I said. You think people just move on from being branded a predator? She was full on crying now. But it didn't move me. I'd cried for years. Alone. Behind dumpsters. In the back of a diner. Crying was a luxury she never let me have. She tried to speak, but I cut her off. You took my name. My family. My future. And for what? Sympathy? Pity? A clean way to dodge a bad decision? I'm sorry, she sobbed. Every day I think about what I did. I hate myself. Good, I said. You should. She looked up, eyes rimmed red. There's one more thing. I didn't want to hear it. But I waited. My daughter, she still thinks it was you. Mom told her it would confuse her if they changed the story now. She still thinks you're the father. She asks about you sometimes. She's seen pictures. Old ones? She wonders why you never visit. My blood went cold. Even after the truth, they'd kept the lie alive. They were letting a child grow up thinking I abandoned her. I stood up so fast the chair scraped across the floor. You don't get to lay that on me. I snapped. You don't get to hand me another burden like it's an apology. Please, I just needed you to know, she whispered. I stared at her one last time. You ruined my life, I said, calm as a closed door. And I hope every night in here is a reminder. Then I walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe until I hit the parking lot. I thought I'd feel free. But I didn't. Some damage doesn't reverse. But walking away? That felt like my first real choice in years. After that visit, I didn't talk to anyone for 3 days. Not Andy. Not my crew. I canceled jobs and let the voicemails pile up. I just sat. In my truck. In my apartment. In the back alley of the same diner where I'd first learned to wash dishes with raw knuckles and a cracked heart. And when I came out of it, I got back to work. Not because I was healed. But because I had a company now. A reputation. My name didn't mean shame anymore. It meant reliability, craftsmanship, second chances. That's when the letter came. Another one. This time from David Kenderson, the second man and falsely accused. His tone was calm, direct. Sebastian, I'm filing a civil suit for defamation and emotional damages. My lawyer says your testimony could help. You deserve justice too. If you're interested, here's my number. I called the next day. We met at a coffee shop just outside the city. David looked like someone who'd been hit by the same storm I had. Calm on the outside, scarred underneath. He shook my hand like we'd both survived a war. It's weird, right? He said, sitting down. Being tied together by someone else's lie. Yeah, I said. It's weird. He told me what happened to him. The accusation. The arrest. The disbelief. The exact same spiral. She did it to both of us, he said. And we both lived with it like a virus. I didn't hesitate. I'll testify. He nodded once. Thank you. The case took months. Lawyers. Depositions. Paper trails. Screenshots. Police statements. Court hearings. But this time? I didn't avoid it. I didn't hide. I showed up in court. Wore my name like armor. Sat across from Anne and told the truth without flinching. I told them everything, how she lied, how it ruined me, how it took me 10 years to become someone again. I didn't speak with anger. I spoke with precision. And sat there the whole time, pale and silent, hands folded like she didn't even recognize the version of me I'd become. When the ruling came down, when the judge sided with David and acknowledged what had been done to us, I didn't feel triumph. I felt clean. Like I'd finally stepped out of the shadow she cast. Later that week, I got a voicemail from Emma. I watched the whole thing online. She said, "You were incredible. Strong. Calm. I'm proud of you." I saved that message. Listened to it 3 times. Because it wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting the story they told about me. And for the first time in a decade, the truth had my name on it. After the courtroom dust settled, life didn't snap back to normal. But it got quieter. The kind of quiet you earn. I poured myself into the business. Took on bigger clients. Expanded to commercial systems. Hired 2 more techs, one of them a 20-year-old kid named Elias who reminded me too much of myself. Quiet, precise, always watching. "You've been through some stuff, haven't you?" I asked him one day after a long install. He looked at me, surprised. Then nodded. I handed him a wrench. "Good. That means you'll build things right." Meanwhile, my family tried again. Emails. Voicemails. Postcards. I didn't answer any of them. But they didn't stop. Then came the knock. I opened the shop door to find my mom standing there. She was older now. Thinner. Her hair had silver streaks she never used to let show. In her hands, a glass casserole dish wrapped in a towel. "I made your favorite," she said. "Chicken and rice. From scratch." I didn't speak. I just wanted to see you. To say sorry. I leaned on the counter and looked at her. Really looked. "You're 10 years too late." She swallowed, eyes already wet. I didn't know what to believe. I didn't. "No," I said, cutting her off. "You didn't want to know. That's different." She looked down. "You're right." She set the casserole on the counter, hands trembling slightly. "You probably won't eat this. I just needed to do something." "Then leave it. And go," I said. And she did. 2 days later, my dad showed up. Parked in the lot like it was his territory. Leaned against his truck, arms crossed like nothing had happened. "You've done well for yourself," he said. "Business. Vans. Clients. I'm proud of you. Get to the point." He shifted. "Your mother's not doing well. She cries every day." I thought, maybe if we all sat down. Cleared the air. I tilted my head. Cleared the air. "You mean like when you knocked the air out of me in front of a room full of people before I could say a word?" He looked away. "You don't have to hold on to hate." "I'm not," I said. "I'm holding on to self-respect." He chuckled. "Calling security on your own father?" "You're not my father," I said. "You're the guy who believed a lie because it was easier than loving me." He stood there a moment too long. Then left. And when the door clicked shut behind him, I didn't feel broken. I felt unburdened. Because forgiveness doesn't mean rebuilding a bridge. Sometimes, it just means refusing to walk back across it. It was a Tuesday morning when Kevin, one of my junior techs, walked into the shop with a box in his hands. "Hey boss," he said. This was sitting outside the office door. No label. Just your name on every envelope. Inside the box were letters. Dozens. All addressed to me. All in the same shaky cursive I hadn't seen since high school. My mother's handwriting. I didn't open a single one. I stacked the envelopes neatly back inside and placed the box on a shelf in the back room, next to the spare thermostats and circuit boards. Out of sight. Out of reach. Out of my life. Because I already knew what they said. We're sorry. We didn't know. God forgives, so should you. Come back. We miss you. But here's the thing, they didn't miss me. They missed the chance to rewrite the ending. They missed the comfort of saying, we made it right. But they never made it right. They made it convenient. That box sat in my storage like a shrine to everything I lost: trust, home, family. And every time I glanced at it, I reminded myself, forgiveness is not something you owe to the people who broke you. Especially when they never stayed to help pick up the pieces. My shop kept growing. I bought a second van. Got a city contract. Clients started referring me to other cities. I updated the website, hired a designer, started getting calls from people I used to admire when I was just a kid fixing fryer fans behind a diner. And in that calm stretch of time, something unexpected happened. I met someone. Her name was Rachel. Graphic designer. Soft voice, big laugh, the kind of calm that felt earned, not borrowed. She didn't ask about the past. Not right away. She just said, whatever you've been through, it didn't break you. We moved slow. Weekends, coffee, dog park visits. She had a fat cat named Marvin who hated everyone except me. I adopted a mutt named Jasper who snored louder than a lawnmower. Rachel moved in 9 months later. Our life was small. Clean. Quiet. And one day, while she was painting the hallway, she looked at me and said, you don't flinch anymore when the phone rings. That's when I realized she was right. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't waiting for ghosts. I was home. The past has a funny way of finding cracks, even when you think you've sealed everyone. It was late, around midnight, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go. Almost. But then I hit play on the voicemail. Hey, it's Dad. If this is still your number, just hear me out. I'm sick. It's cancer. Stage 4. I don't want anything. I swear. I'd like to see you once. Before it's too late. Please. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, son. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of hate. Not out of bitterness. Out of clarity. That voice? That man? He made his choice the night he threw his fist instead of asking a single question. He handed me to the wolves because it was easier than looking at the girl crying and thinking, what if she's lying? So now? He could sit with that choice. Because I had spent 10 years picking up the wreckage. 10 years building a name no one could take. 10 years learning how to breathe without needing approval. That voicemail didn't wreck me. It freed me. The next morning, I put on my boots, kissed Rachel goodbye, fed Jasper, and went to work. That afternoon, I installed a heating unit for a daycare center run by a single mom who gave me a thank you card that said, you make broken things warm again. And I laughed. Because that was it, wasn't it? They threw me out into the cold once. Now I made a life out of fixing cold things for other people. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. I needed peace. And I had it. A few weeks after the voicemail, I got a message that stopped me in my tracks. A text. No name attached. Just, she knows now. We finally told her. The truth. She cried. A lot. I stared at it for a long time before I realized who it had to be. Anne's daughter. The little girl who spent 10 years growing up thinking I was the villain in a story I never wrote. The one who stared at old photos and wondered why I was never there. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. But because I didn't know if that message came from Anne, or my mom, or someone else entirely. And I didn't need the answer. The fact that they told her? That was enough. A day later, a letter arrived. No envelope. Just folded paper with ink that bled slightly at the edges. Hi. My name's Ava. I think I'm your niece. I know what happened now. I'm sorry they lied. I don't know if you'll ever want to meet me, but I saw a picture of you fixing a heater for a shelter and thought that was really cool. You look kind. I just wanted to say hi. I read it twice. Then again. Then I folded it carefully and slipped it into the unsent box with all the letters I never mailed. But not because it didn't belong. Because it was the first one that didn't need to be sent back. That night I sat on the porch with Rachel, watching Jasper chase moths across the grass. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah. I think I am." She leaned on my shoulder, her voice soft. "What would you say if she asked to meet you one day?" I didn't even have to think. I'd say, "Come as you are. No lies. No stories. Just truth." The porch light buzzed overhead. Inside, dinner was still warm. Marvin the cat had claimed my pillow again. The world kept turning. And for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel like I was hiding behind a new name. I felt like I'd earned it. Not as revenge. Not as repair. As rebirth. 6 months later, I was closing up the shop when I got an email with the subject line: Panel Invite, Redemption and Resilience Summit 2026. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But curiosity won. They wanted me to speak. Not just attend. Speak. A panel titled, Building After the Burn, Life After False Accusations. I sat there for a long time, rereading the invitation. 10 years ago, I couldn't get a landlord to call me back. Now they wanted to hear me. To hear me. I said yes. The summit was in Denver. I wore my cleanest boots and the jacket Rachel insisted I buy. In case you ever have to look successful in public. The other panelists were lawyers, therapists, a woman wrongfully imprisoned for 5 years. Real warriors. When it was my turn, I stepped onto the stage and looked out at 100 strangers, some crying, some stone-faced, all waiting. And I told them. I told them about my parents. About the night I was erased. About the years it took just to believe I still existed. I didn't cry. I didn't perform. I just told the truth. After the panel, a man in a wrinkled polo came up and shook my hand like it was made of glass. "My son, he went through something like that. He didn't make it. But you did." We stood there for a long time in silence. Sometimes grief doesn't need a conversation. Just company. Later, in the hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the city lights. Rachel texted, "Proud of you. Come home to us." And that was the moment I realized. I wasn't a story that got buried. I was the one who climbed out. 2 weeks after the summit, I got a letter. Not a bill. Not a summons. A letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a photo. Me, 17 years old, holding Anne's bike steady while she learned to ride. I remembered the day. She scraped her knee. I ran 3 blocks to the gas station for a Band-Aid and a cherry icy. The note said, "I found this. Thought you should have it. Not because it makes things better. But because that version of you existed too. And maybe he deserves to be remembered." No signature. But I knew the handwriting. Eliza, Anne's daughter. She was maybe 11 or 12 now. Old enough to understand what happened. Old enough to ask her own questions. Old enough to make her own judgments. I didn't cry. I did sit down at my workbench and stare at that photo for a long time. That boy in the picture, me, he'd been thrown into a nightmare that day at dinner. And somehow, he made it through. I took a small frame down from the shelf, one that used to hold a company license I didn't care about anymore, and replaced it with the photo. Set it right on my desk. So that every time I clocked in, every time I started a job, every time I looked at a broken system and started piecing it back together, I'd remember that kid. The one who stood up even after everyone else turned their backs. There was a knock on the office door just as I was closing up shop for the weekend. I opened it expecting a client, or a delivery. Instead, it was Sam. My older brother. He looked like a man who hadn't slept right in years. Same eyes, same stance, but now with a crease in his forehead I didn't remember. "Seb," he said. No one had called me that in almost a decade. He cleared his throat, glanced behind him, like maybe someone had dared him to show up. "I know I'm the last person you want to see. And I won't stay if you tell me to go. I needed to say something in person." I said nothing. Just opened the door wider and gestured toward the chair in front of the counter. "Saturday. You were right," he said. "Back then. We should have asked. We should have waited. We should have known better. Why didn't you?" I asked. He sighed. "Because and cried first. And Dad hit first. And after that, no one wanted to be the one to say maybe we got it wrong. That's not an answer. No, he said, eyes down. It's an excuse. A coward's one. We sat in silence. He looked around the shop. At the certificates, the shelves, the tools hanging clean and ordered. The workbench that looked like it had purpose. You did this, he said quietly. With no one. From nothing. I don't think I could have. I stared at him. Then finally asked, why now? He swallowed. My wife left. Took the kids. Said I never processed what we did to you. Said she didn't want to raise our daughters around a man who let his own brother get buried alive. That landed. He looked me in the eye. I'm not here to beg. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. And if you ever decide you want to punch me in the mouth, I won't stop you. I didn't move. Didn't nod. Didn't reach for the apology. But I said, I don't want to hit you. He let out a long breath. Then stood, and before walking out said, you deserve better. You still do. The door shut behind him. I locked it. Turned off the lights. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the anger ease. Not gone. But quieter. Spring came slow that year. The kind of slow where you don't notice it at first, just the sunlight changing angles, the air softening a little, the way the cold doesn't bite quite as hard when you step outside. Rachel and I were walking Jasper after dinner one night when she said, you seem lighter. Do I? Yeah. Like you've been carrying a suitcase for years and finally set it down. I didn't say anything. But she was right. Because one by one, the pieces of that old life weren't screaming anymore. The pain wasn't raw. The echoes were quieter. And then one day I did something I hadn't planned. I opened one of the letters in the box. Just one. It was from my mom. The handwriting was slanted and slow, like each word had to be wrestled out. I see you in everything now. In the way the door sticks. In the tea kettle. In the quiet moments when I realize I gave my trust to the wrong child. I didn't believe you. I didn't protect you. And that is something I will carry until I'm gone. I'm not asking for anything. Just that maybe one day, you'll let me say this to your face. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I read it once. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. I put it back in the box. But this time, I didn't lock it shut. That weekend, Rachel and I drove up to a cabin, nothing fancy, just enough peace and pine to slow your breathing. We grilled steaks, watched bad horror movies, and took a Polaroid of ourselves under the stars. On the ride home, I tucked the photo into the sun visor above my seat. Because this was my family now. No blood ties. No history to survive. Just a woman who saw me clearly. And a dog who snored like a tractor. I didn't plan to hear from her again. But one afternoon, while I was tuning up the compressor on a rooftop downtown, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi. It's Ava. I'm old enough now. I'd like to meet you. If you're open to that. That was it. No guilt trip. No apology she didn't owe. Just a quiet ask. I stared at the screen with work gloves still on, my heart hammering like it hadn't in years. I waited 3 hours before I replied. I'm open. One condition. You come as yourself. No versions. Just you. She replied almost instantly. I wouldn't know how to be anyone else. We met 2 weeks later. Public park. Broad daylight. Neutral ground. She was taller than I expected. Same eyes as N. But something softer around the edges. Kinder. Like she didn't inherit the weight, only the questions. She walked up, hands in her hoodie pocket, nervous smile trembling on her lips. You're taller than you look in the picture, she said. I get that a lot, I said. We sat on a bench under a half-bloomed tree and talked. About school. Art. The story she'd been told, and the one she finally knew. She didn't ask for details. She just said, I'm sorry they used your name. I didn't need to say anything back. She already knew. And when she asked, can we keep in touch? I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I said. We can. It wasn't healing. It wasn't a reunion. It was something else. A start. Word got around that Ava and I had met. Not loudly. Not with drama. But somehow, it trickled back to my mom. A week later, another letter came. This time hand-delivered by someone at the front desk, no envelope, just folded paper and shaky cursive. She said you were kind? Said you didn't yell or make her feel ashamed. I don't deserve your mercy, but I thank you for giving it to her. I didn't respond. But I didn't throw it out either. I just folded it gently and tucked it into the same box where the others lived. The difference now? That box didn't feel like a wound anymore. It felt like a museum. A place for things that mattered once, but didn't get to run my life anymore. The shop hit its 3rd anniversary that month. Andy came by with a bottle of cider and a hand-scribbled card that read, "Knew you'd make it, kid. I just hoped I'd be alive to see it." Rachel made a cake that tasted like pancakes and love. Jasper got a new bed in the corner of the shop, curled up like he owned the place. And me? I stood in the doorway that night, lights off, just listening to the faint hum of the cooling systems I built. There was a kind of poetry in that. I used to be the boy who got thrown out into the cold. Now, I made warmth for a living. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when a letter arrived from the correctional facility. Not from Anne. From her therapist. Typed. Clinical. Direct. And has started a restorative justice course. As part of it, she's been writing letters she cannot send. She asked if I would forward this one. You're under no obligation to respond. Attached was 1 page. Handwritten. Neat. Still unmistakably hers. Sebastian. I've written this letter 20 times and torn up every version. I don't know if this will ever reach you, and maybe that's okay. I don't want forgiveness. I want you to live a life where I am not a shadow. I want your name to mean strength again. I want your future to feel clean. I know I took something from you. I know you'll never get it back. But if this letter is the last thing I ever say to you, let it be this. I was wrong. And you were good. Even when no one believed it. Especially then. I didn't cry. I didn't fold it with care. I didn't burn it. I slid it, unceremoniously, into the back of the box with all the others and closed the lid. Because some apologies aren't about healing. They're about admitting the wreckage out loud. And if she needed to say it, she could. But I didn't need to carry it. That night, I sat with Rachel and Ava on the back deck, watching Jasper dream with his legs twitching like he was chasing something heroic. Rachel leaned over and asked, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" I thought about it. About the years lost. About the nights in the car. About the strangers who gave more grace than the people who raised me. Then I looked at her. And at Ava, smiling faintly, drawing stars on the edge of her notebook. And I said, "No. Not anymore." I didn't expect to see my name in the paper. But there it was. Local business spotlight. Winter Air Systems, one man's second chance becomes a city's lifeline. The photo was unflattering. My hair was a mess. Jasper was in the corner chewing a wrench. But the headline? It hit something inside me I didn't know was still raw. Because that's what it had become. Not revenge. Not reputation. But redemption. A client taped the article to our breakroom fridge. Rachel framed it in the office. Ava cut it out and mailed a copy to her school counselor. Because she said stories like this don't exist. They do now. A month later, I got a request from a local high school, career day. One of the students had seen my panel talk online. Said they wanted me to come speak about HVAC, sure, but also about rebuilding. About surviving lies. About what to do when the world you knew burns down and the only thing you have left is the truth. I walked into that school wearing the same boots I'd worn the night my life fell apart. Same brand. Different man. I stood on that stage and told them, "Your name isn't what people say about you. It's what you build after they stop talking. Your name is yours when you earn it back, 1 day, 1 hour, 1 wrench at a time." Afterward, a kid came up to me and said, "My brother's in juvie. He says nobody listens. I'm gonna send him your story." I put a hand on his shoulder. "Tell him I believe him." And I meant it. Because maybe that's all we're ever doing. Reaching back for the versions of ourselves that never got believed. And making sure they don't get left behind. The last time I heard from my father was a short email. No subject line. Just 1 sentence. "We think about you every day." I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness. Just clarity. Because I think about me every day too. And the difference is I stayed. I stayed when it hurt. I stayed when I was alone. I stayed when there was no one left to call and nothing left to prove. I stayed, and I rebuilt. 1 bolt at a time. Ava texts me sometimes. Not often. Just little things. I passed my math exam. Mom called today. Said she's proud of me. I didn't know how to feel about that. I'm gonna volunteer at the shelter this summer. Every time, I reply the same way. You don't have to carry what she did. You just have to decide what kind of person you'll be. And from where I'm sitting, you're already better. Jasper's older now. Slower. Still loyal. Rachel talks about buying a cabin someday. Something small, near the water. She wants to paint more. I want to build a second shop. Maybe train some of the kids who remind me of me. I've stopped running from my name. And I've stopped waiting for them to change. They made their choice. Now I live mine. And maybe that's the real ending. Not the door slamming. Not the courtroom vindication. But this. A quiet house. A steady breath. A furnace that works. The kind of life you don't have to defend. It was the anniversary again. Not of the lie. Not of the arrest. But of the night I walked away for the last time, with a backpack, $200 in cash, and a face the world didn't trust. 10 years to the day. I stood outside the diner where it all started. Andy's old place. New owners now. Same flickering sign. Same stool in the window where I used to eat half-leftover burgers and wonder if I'd ever matter again. I didn't go in. Just stood there with my hands in my pockets and nodded at the past. Then I got back in my truck and drove to the home I built with Rachel. Jasper was on the porch, wagging his tail slow and sleepy. Rachel had 2 mugs in her hand, one for me, one for her. Ava was inside making something that smelled like cinnamon. I looked at them, at this strange, beautiful constellation of people who didn't share my blood but saved my life all the same. And I thought, this is the story. Not the accusation. Not the betrayal. Not the erasure. This. The rebuild. The warmth. The part they can't take back. The part one own. The day the shop hit its 5th year, we threw a party. Not a big one. Just some regulars. The crew. Rachel. Ava. Andy. Jasper, and a birthday hat he definitely didn't ask for. Someone made a slideshow, photos of our first install jobs, the broken down van I started with, the night we hit 100 clients. My voice in one of the clips was barely recognizable. Younger. Tighter. Still clawing his way toward worth. I watched in silence while the video played. Then Ava leaned over and said, "You know what I think?" "What?" "You're the proof that being erased doesn't mean you disappear. It just means you come back with a sharper pen." I didn't answer. But later, after everyone left, I opened the box. The unsent letters. I pulled one out at random, an early one, full of anger and pain, and read it one last time. Then I set it on the grill outside. Lit a match. Watched it curl and blacken and vanish into flame. Not because I forgave them. Not because they changed. But because I had. This story? It was mine now. And whatever came next would be written in my own ink. One clean line at a time. It's morning now. Jasper's snoring at my feet. Rachel's humming in the kitchen, barefoot, painting sunlight onto the walls with her voice. Ava's sleeping in the guest room. We're driving her to a college visit later. First choice. Full scholarship. She'll make it. We all did. I used to think closure came from dramatic moments. Headlines. Courtroom gasps. A family begging at my feet. Turns out, it's quieter. It's waking up in a house you paid for with your own hands. It's watching someone you love pour coffee into the same mug every morning because routine finally feels like safety. It's fixing a heater in a stranger's home and knowing they'll sleep warm because of you. It's being remembered for who you are, not who someone else said you were. I used to be a boy erased. Now I'm a man who builds warmth. They still reach out sometimes. Letters. Holidays. A card from my mother once that said, "Hope you're well." I didn't reply. Not to be cruel. To be clear. Because healing didn't mean reunion. It meant choosing peace over permission. Choosing silence over spinning the story again and again. It meant accepting that some things stay broken, but you don't have to. This story started with a lie. A single sentence that cost me everything. But I survived it. I outlived the shame. And I built something no lie could tear down. A name. A life. A family. My truth didn't just clear my name. It rewrote it. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been erased, ruined, thrown out by the people who swore they loved you, don't wait for their apology to start healing. Don't wait for someone else to say, "You mattered." Say it to yourself. Then prove it. One nail, one page, one steady breath at a time. I'm Sebastian Winter. And I'm not their shame anymore. I'm my own redemption. And my story? Ends warm. Always warm. And that was it. My girlfriend called me that night in tears. I believe you, Seb, she said. But my parents won't let me talk to you again. I'm sorry. Then she hung up. That night, I slept in my car behind a gas station. It was the first night of the rest of my life. And if someday Ava wants to tell this story to someone, her roommate, her daughter, maybe a kid who thinks they're too broken to start again, I hope she tells it with pride. I hope she says, he didn't just survive. He built. And that someone listening nods, feeling the truth settle into their chest like heat through a vent. You were never erased. You were just waiting to begin.